Hi everyone, I'm really sorry that I'm not able to be with you at this conference today, and I hope that everything that you're hearing and discussing is fruitful and helpful, and apologies for my rather blocked nose and strange voice. My name's Hugh Nelson. I'm the Bishop of St Germans, one of the bishops in the Anglican Diocese of Truro, which covers all of Cornwall and the two very best parishes in Devon. One of my roles, one of my portfolios, is to oversee our commitment to net zero and the wider response to the climate and biodiversity emergencies that we all face. Earlier this year, after a time of careful thought and consultation and prayer, we as a whole diocese launched a new strategy for this work around creation care, and we sum it up in three short phrases. Our commitments are to cherish creation, to cut carbon, and to speak up. By cherish creation, we mean that we will support individuals and church communities and schools and the diocese as a whole to cherish that part of creation that has been given into their care. So that might be your back garden or a school playground or a local beach or a bit of glebe land or a churchyard, for instance. And when we use the word cherish, we mean more than just look after. We mean what it means when a wedding couple are invited to love, honour and cherish each other. It's to treasure, it's to nurture, it's to seek the best for, cherish creation. And by cut carbon, well, we mean exactly what it says, that we, along with the rest of the Church of England, are committed to reaching net zero by 2030 and then, pray God, to go beyond that. Cherish creation, cut carbon, and by speak up, we mean that we want to encourage, to invite, to challenge others to take up the call to cherish creation and to cut carbon. We know, of course, that we've got to get our own house in order, but we also want to speak up for nature, for creation, and for a different way of life. And so with that in mind, this investment was an important first step for us. And we're really clear, it's just that, it's just a first step, that there are many other steps that we still need to take, but the first step is always a good place to start. And practically speaking, what that means is that we've worked with our fund managers around the portfolios that they look after, and one of them, CCLA, well, they've already disinvested from fossil fuel extraction, and so we've remained with them. Another, well, they decided not to offer a fossil-free fund, and so we sold our holding there, telling them why we had decided to do that. The money that's been freed up from that fund, well, that's now been invested with two other funds, which were chosen, carefully chosen according to environmental and social and governance criteria. And our policy now is, first, to disinvest from fossil fuel extraction industries, and then second, to actively seek to invest in funds that help address the climate change emergency. And with that second point in mind, the reinvestment, we've put nearly £2 million into 6 infrastructure funds which invest directly in renewables. Now, just to reiterate, we are very aware this is just the start of the journey. These changes, of course, don't mean that we've eliminated fossil fuels as a whole from all our investments. Lots of industries are still reliant on them, of course, and we often recall Archbishop Justin's embarrassment when, after publicly taking on Wonga, it turned out that the Church of England had some funds invested in Wonga. This is therefore just a first step, but we are committed to continuing the journey with the next step and the next step and the next step. And for us, this decision is both coherent with what it means to be church, followers of the way of Jesus Christ, who, after all, pointed out that our hearts tend to live wherever we invest our treasure, and with our discerned priorities to cherish creation, to cut carbon, and to speak up. And while cherishing creation for church communities, for instance, means caring for their buildings and churchyards with creation in mind, for the diocese as a whole, it means, at the very least, investing our finance for creation's benefit rather than its damage. And in doing that, we will inevitably and directly cut carbon. And then, having done that, we want to speak up and to encourage others to do the same, cherish creation, cut carbon, and speak up. And in terms of what's made it possible for us to make this decision, well, there are a couple of things that were key. The most important was to have people in the senior decision-making groups for whom this is a commitment. And for us, that means the chair of our Board of Finance, it means the diocesan secretary, and it means members of the investment committee who do the work, the scrutiny around where we're putting our money. And they did all of that work. And they did it not because they were told to, but because they already thought it mattered. They were committed already. The second thing, I think, is to have a coherent diocesan approach to the climate emergency and a really clear commitment to creation care, not as just something we'll get to when we can, but as a top priority and for everyone. Anglican dioceses are strange things. They operate much more like a federation of different interest groups, each with a slightly different aim or motivation than they do a business or a charity. So we're made up of schools and churches and employed staff and clergy and volunteers and formal decision-making bodies, all at multiple different levels. It's complicated stuff. Now, in a big business, if the chief executive wants something to happen, then she or he can, reasonably clearly make it happen. But that's just not true in an Anglican diocese. And so something as complex as this needs an approach that is clear and coherent and which works with the grain of diocesan culture and organisation and systems. And that's what we've tried to do with our strategy. The third thing that has helped us, which is much broader, and in a sense the good news, that it makes really good financial sense to make this kind of move. Because of course, our finance people, while they're committed to the environment, they also, quite rightly, want a good return on our investment, because it is, after all, the inheritance of the church in Cornwall, which is used to pay for our ongoing mission and ministry. And so one of the questions that I asked the chair of the Board of Finance when he was doing some of this work was whether he would be willing to make the same decision about disinvestment, even if it meant losing money. And he said, yes, he would, but that he was absolutely sure it was not going to come to that, because investing less in fossil fuels and more in renewables, well, that makes absolute financial sense as well as missional sense. There are, it is clear, fewer and fewer reasons for churches and dioceses not to make this move, so that together all of us who follow Jesus Christ can better cherish creation, cut carbon, and speak up. And I hope that your journey in that direction is richly blessed as well. God bless you all.